What's up guys, it's Brendan from Modern to Me, and today we're going to be moving on to something that I also think is very useful along with everything else I've been teaching you, but this one's actually really cool. It's something a little different. So what we're learning today is something called ArrayLists. We've learned basic arrays. Let's just go through those real quick and remember what they do. So remember, an array is essentially just a list of a certain type of element. So if you had an when I say element, I mean data type. So if you had like an array of ints, just create int array, and you can put the square brackets here or at the end. I prefer to go there, and then you set it equal to new int 10, or let's just go 5, I guess. So now we have an int array with 5 elements, and we can set int array 0 equal to 1. Just copy this real quick, and you can essentially just create a specific number of elements in this array. You can't change that number, and then you can set their individual values, access their individual values, and this is useful for stuff like that, like maps are going to have a certain number of elements, a certain number of tiles, I guess you could say, or something like a certain number of enemies. There's going to be a certain number for sure. This can be very useful, and it's definitely something I remember forever and ever and ever. But there's actually a really even more useful type of array that I tend to use more often than this kind of array. I guess I shouldn't say more often. I'd say about equal. It depends on what kind of game you're making, depends on your need. But let me show you what this is, this array list. This array list allows you to create elements on a need basis. So there's no set permanent like width, or I guess not width, but length for the array, number of elements. When you create an array, you have to type that new int and then have like 10. You need 10 elements, or like 7. You need to know ahead of time. Well, with ArrayList, it does not matter at all. So this is really nice. So this is something that we have to import, like we have been like with the scanner and the math class. So just type import and then go java.util.array list, and this is going to import the array list. This is all we need to do to get started with our array lists. So creating an array list is also, as useful as it is, the kind of like the drawback, not really drawback once you get used to it, but it's kind of different to declare. It's kind of tricky. So you still type the variable name, you type the array list, and now you type in like a what are those called, like the brackets, but like the less than and greater than signs. I can't remember what they're called, but you type those brackets, and then inside these brackets you type the type of variable that you want to create the array for. So like when we create int arrays, that process. So if we wanted to create something with this, we type the kind of variable we want. But here's the catch: you can't type a primitive data type. So we can't do ArrayList int and then, well, let me show you after we don't break the rule. You have to do it with a class. It can't be a primitive data type. It has to be a class. So we can go like string. So let's go ArrayList string. Let's just name it strings. So that's same. You have ArrayList. Then in here in the brackets you type the class name, and then you name your ArrayList, and you set it equal to new, because ArrayList itself is a class. So you're creating a new class instance, and new ArrayList, and then again you type the variable that you want to represent. Make sure it's the same or make sure it's the same class. Make sure you type the same class here and here. Otherwise, well, you don't even want to know what's going to happen. But yeah, don't do that. And then after this, you need to add these parentheses, because it's a class. And when you create classes, that's just kind of how it works. You create the constructor, so that's why you have to have those parentheses. Okay, so now, like I said, what you can't do is you can't go like ArrayList int new ArrayList int. This isn't gonna work. You're gonna get an error. What's it say? It says a whole bunch of different crap. Just know that you can't do this. But if you do want to create something with integers, something I'll get into in a little bit, there's a class type for integers. If you go capital I integer, and then if you do the same in here, you can have an array list of integers. But just know that don't try. I know if you want to try like messing around with these things, it's not going to work if you use primitive data type, so I wanted to make sure I kind of got that out of the way so you didn't try messing with that. Know that it has to be a class. Okay, so we got that covered. Now let's get into the good stuff. Let's actually kind of do something with this array list that we just created. So alright, so we allocated it, we created our instance of our array list, so now let's add in our strings. So the first method you really want to be aware of is the add method for these strings, or for the array list, excuse me. So when you create an array list, this add method is what you add your elements in through. You call this add method, and you can add in the strings that you want, or the class that you want, the class that the array list is representing. So we can go like hello is one of our strings, and then we can add another string, and just go like pickles. So that's nice. It's always nice to add pickles. Hello pickles. Strings dot add potatoes. That's always good. So that's nice. So this is kind of the main way, or a very good way, I should say, to add elements into your array list. So now that you have all of these elements in your array list, how do you actually access them? Well, accessing them is, in essence, kind of similar to the way an array works, but it's not the same notation, not the same syntax. It's also a method. So let's say you want to get the first element. By the way, elements, the indices work the same way as arrays. So there's the zeroth element, I guess you could say the element at the index of 0 is the first. So hello is at the index of 0. Pickles is at the index of 1, potatoes is at the index of 2, etc., etc. And just so you know, when you add elements onto an array list, it's kind of like, it kind of adds them in sequential order. So when you're adding hello, it's an empty array list, so it adds it to the first available index, which is 0. And then when you add pickles, array list has one element in it at index 0, so it just goes ahead and adds it onto the next available index, which is 1. So that's kind of how that works. So it's going to add these in order in the appropriate index. So if we wanted to get the element at index 0, you could go strings.get 0, and if we just output this real quick, system.out.println, you can go strings.get 0, and now if we output this, or run this program, I should say, we get hello. And if we were to do strings.get 2 and run this, we get potatoes. Yes, awesome. That's pretty cool. So that's how you are able to access all of these elements, by getting their index. Now, another really, really useful thing you can do is you can add elements into a certain index. So let me kind of just show you what I mean by that. This will kind of really show you how powerful these array lists are. So if we were going to type strings.add and then go to this method right here, or just kind of take note on what's happening. So there are two parameters, the index and the element. So we type the index we want to insert this element into. So let's just go 1, index 1. And if we were to type pancakes, then we have just inserted this pancakes string into the index of 1. And let's print this out so you can see what happened here. So let's create a for loop in I is equal to 0. And then if we were to go I is less than, another method I'm going to throw at you here from strings list, or from array list, type strings dot and then size. This is a very useful method. This is just like typing dot length for an array. Remember, if you type dot length, you'll get an int returned for the array size. This is a method that returns an int of its size. And I'll just finish it off with I++ right here. Okay, so let's print out all of these elements. If you go system.out.println, and within here, just type strings.get, and then in this parameter, do you know what we're going to type? We're going to type I. And so within here, we will just run this and see what we get. We get hello, pancakes, pickles, potatoes. So what it did is it inserted pancakes at element 1, but not only did it do that, but it actually pushed all of the elements after the index of 1 back. So it kind of does all of that like really complicated work for you. If you wanted to do this with just regular arrays, man, you would not have a fun time. This is a great way to do this because it handles all of that transfer of the other elements for you. It pushes them all back and you don't have to worry about anything. It just inserts the element where you want it to go and it works perfectly. Okay, so I think we've learned enough methods for this tutorial. I think I've kind of tortured you enough. So in the next tutorial, I am going to continue on with ArrayLists, and we're going to keep talking about this awesome class in Java. I'll see you guys there.